Hey, everybody, it's Bobby Blair. It is April the 15th. Hope you filed your taxes. It's the big day. If not, file an extension. I think they give you till October. Not the biggest deal in the world. I just want to let everybody know today's show is going to be dynamic because you're going to hear 99% why it's so risky to invest in commodities, but the 1% is what separates champions from being pretty good to being super great. So the 1% is what you're searching for. And Andy's going to dig right in. This is our fourth week of a 6-week series. Andy has been so transparent in the trades, how the war in Iran has adjusted the whole infrastructure of commodity trading, the whole concepts of methodologies that have worked in the past. Some of them from actually way past years ago are starting to come to the forefront again. We learned last week that patience, sometimes doing nothing is something, meaning not making a trade, just kind of letting the market, work itself out. We went in on soybeans real big. I'll be interested to hear how we're doing this week. It's a long-term play. It's not a short-term play, even though there was some in and outs that I hear may have happened, and Andy will talk about that a little more. But Andy, welcome back to the show. Tumultuous times. I mean, we're getting a little too old for these tumultuous times, but at the end of the day, it's where your lifetime of skills and tenacity and all the education that you've learned by being actually in the field, actually making the trades, living and dying by the sword. I don't know if there's anybody in the country that I could have on this show tonight that would be more, I would say, honest and transparent about where the commodity world is today, how challenging it is, but at the same time, where the opportunities are, and telling the 100% truth. So I want to kind of build on what my post was this week and what the show was going to be about. And it's about risk, RISK. So, Andy, get into it and tell us about how you're managing this risk, how you determine what risk means to you, and how we're going to, climb out of this and find a win.
Well, first off, Bobby, thanks again for having me here. I've enjoyed our podcast. This is week 4, and it's been a great first 3 weeks. And, you've talked about my transparency and not dodging questions. And one of the things that I haven't spoken that much about in the first 3 weeks, and I see you're sitting down, which is a good thing, it's risk. And in commodities, there's a risk of loss. You can lose money. You can lose all your principal. You could actually lose more than just your principal. Now, I think it's a good thing to understand that. And as I've spoken about in previous weeks, I talked about giving the market my highest level of respect because I think there's a real life situation to the market, but there's also a game situation. And I see it all the time when I watch the markets. It happens especially towards the end of the month because you have a lot of firms with a lot of money that can push the market around, and they're all trying to make their monthly new highs and their incentive fees. And so there's that game aspect to it, but there's also the real life part. And so, I think anybody that's getting involved in the commodity markets needs to understand the risk. As we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of different levels of risk. There's a risk of doing nothing, and there's a risk of doing something. Now, the commodities market, because of the leverage that is available, can be very risky. It can make people think that they can make a lot of money in a short period of time, and it's possible that that could happen, but they could also lose just as much money. So we have we've created consistent positive annual results by managing our risk as best we can. We have a very conservative money management approach, and when we've talked in the past, we've compared what Volkert Investment Management does to the game of tennis, because that's where I came from. I came from the tennis courts, and I played, and then I coached. Probably a better coach than a player. but I always talk to the players about hitting the right shot, hitting the smart shot, and understanding the game. So with that, in one of my real life experiences, there was a gentleman named Barry, and he worked in New York for many years. He was at a Wall Street firm, and he managed about 38 brokers. And he told me, he goes, Andy, 10 of those brokers traded futures and they all lost. And he said, I've heard that 90% of all the people that trade commodities lose. And I said, I actually heard it was 95%. So, the whole idea is to manage risk and then have a good approach. And as we've talked about, let the market come to you. Don't try to force things. So that's really what Volkert Investment Management has done in the past. That's what we're doing today. I can tell you that even with the positive, consistent annual results, there's times when we're down. I've spoken about being uncomfortable, and there are times when it's uncomfortable. But with the knowledge of having all of the price data behind you and the actual results behind you, it becomes a little bit less uncomfortable.
Well, hats off to you for being so transparent. And I guess the better question might be is how do you run a business when you preface it as 90 to 95% challenging? Other than I think I know the answer is that you go slow, you have a methodology. I believe it's 13 years of annual positive results. Um, Same clients for many of those for the same years, new people joining all the time. So there is a real special sauce here. And I believe it's the patience and the diligence and your desire to not make a trade unless it just makes full sense within your realm of trading in the index world and ETF world where I come from a little bit. That's called a methodology, and you can never deviate from the methodology and be turned on by the peripheral short-term wins of others, short-term antics that might happen in the market that might tempt you to go for a home run because you got to make up a little bit from the last few months that might have been a little slower. So I think you've mastered this, and at the same time, you're very clear that it's very risky, and you've still been able to build an incredible business and have incredible victories for your clients. And that's pretty amazing. Where do you see the market right now, today, the 15th of April, in the midst of this war? Um, where do you think we're going?
Well, before I answer that, I'll come back to that. I'd like to touch on a couple of things that you said. Number one, if 90 to 95% of the people that trade commodities lose, what it probably means is that the 5 to 10% that win do quite well. So, I mean, that's a nice thing to know. And the other thing that you said was, and so, coming out of my mouth right now, I started getting ready to be in this business 5 years before the business began, and I had to develop a 5-year track record. And so in that 5-year track record, there were no losing years. Add that to 2013 until present. And so really, it's more like 18 consecutive positive years. And so I'm very proud of that. I mentioned my cousin, I think maybe the first podcast, he had like 23 or 24 positive years in the options market. So I have some goals. There's,
Well, I will say, Andy, real quick about that point, and thank you for making it, because my job is not to promote you. It's really to get down to the brass tacks of commodity trading to be a source of revenue and income, passive income for you guys that open up accounts with Andy. But I will tell you, you're heavily regulated. So when you represent those returns, I know for sure, and you've told me that the regulators are watching the podcast. They have made some suggestions to us, which are all very positive. So when he says that he's had 18 years of positive results, positive annual returns, that's an absolute fact. Because if not, the regulators would have a big problem with that, right?
Uh, we've talked about that, and so just a shout out to Armando and Ramiro and Vera and Steven. And yeah, we'll talk about the NFA in a little bit. But the other thing that I would say is that I've had a lot of positive years, and that's a great thing. But that doesn't mean that it will continue. There's a saying in the industry that past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
That's
And
right.
so, I'll put that right out there. There's always a risk of loss, no matter who you're with. But at the same time, who do you want to be with? The person who's, led the ship, to clear waters, or the person who, has tried to do that and hasn't always done so well. The other thing is, we talk about tennis. We talk about winners win. Winners hang out with winners, and so Peter Jorniak hangs out with you because he knows that you have a track record. You were a player, you were a coach, and a darn good one, and you kind of led him to the promised land. So, I think that's something to be said. But past performance are not necessarily indicative of future results. And, we're always going to be holding that high level of respect and trying to, as you kind of mentioned, you form a game plan, you stick with the game plan, the methodology, what's worked. And the scariest or probably worst thing that you could do is to get away from your methodology and win, because then you think you can beat your methodology, and pretty soon it's not going to happen. So we stick with the game plan.
Are there any, comforts? I never want to use the word guarantees, but are there any real comforts that you can give to clients to get them to pass this risk barrier of entry to get in and get in the game? What
Well,
other than what we've talked about, which are amazing attributes of you as a coach? I mean, you could have been a doctor that spent his living telling people bad news. You could have been a cancer doctor, and you've got such a way of communicating and making people feel comfortable. But at the end of the day, if a tornado's coming, a tornado's coming. I think you're seeing those tornadoes sooner and faster than most. I think you know how to take cover better than most, and I think you know how to recover better than most. Um, but anything worth doing is worth taking the risk. And like you said earlier, if 90% are losing, which I think that's probably pretty aggressive, but I just don't think there'd be a business if that many people were really losing, but maybe there is. But it tells me that the people that are winning, the 10%, they're winning huge. And I would say that, Andy Roddick and Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, what did they have? What did they have that the 30th player didn't have? They didn't have the quality of coach that maybe could have taken them next level, because maybe the best coaches were being paid 10, 20, $30,000 a week plus 10% of the prize money, which is another, on $1 million victory is another 100,000. The player ranked 30 can't make that possible to a Brad Gilbert or, a Carlos Moya. So in my world, here's tennis again. You're making your services available, and you're the Brad Gilbert of commodity trading. You're the Darren Cahill. You're the Billie Jean King. You're, the Jim Courier, that really understands the game at the highest level, who knows how to weather a storm, knows how to get players out of predicaments, learns how to pivot a little bit at the right time. keeps a high level of confidence in the game when the game is getting tough. I consider you that in this world, getting to know you through this process. And I think that's why you're the achiever of the 10%.
Well, you mentioned tennis, and we could talk about that for a long time. So maybe we'll do a tennis podcast someday. Um, but I would say this: I totally agree with you that the top 30 cannot. Um, they're at a disadvantage in a big way because they don't have the resources to hire the team that the Novak Djokovic's have and the Rafael Nadal and the Carlos Alcaraz. But before those guys had the team, they had one other thing that I think you'll agree with. All of the champions had a belief. They had a belief in themselves, and there a lot of different, slight variations. Yvonne Lendl back in the day, he had a belief that he could figure things out. And he could work harder than anybody. There's all different types of belief, but anyway, and first off, thank you for the compliment because that's a really nice compliment coming from you. Um, I think there's people that are way smarter than me and know way more than me, but nobody will out-try me. And so you asked me about the comforts, and that's the comfort. That's the comfort that I'll give anybody, is that I will try my hardest. And truth be told, I believe very strongly that that's really all that we can control.
Yeah. It really is a comforting thing to know that you've got the coach that has done what you've done now 18 years guiding the ship, which kind of leads to what's available to everyone that's watching this podcast. I know that we've got friends and family that are going to be working with you, some of them starting around the 18th of the month, um, waiting for some family things, and others who are really excited about their time that they're going to spend with you, where you're going to trade their accounts for them. You're going to open the accounts, trade it. They're going to do a power of attorney. You're going to trade it. They can see the balance every day. It's their money, their account. They're simply authorizing you to make the trades. And for accounts that start at $25,000, you're actually doing it for a flat fee of $69 a month, which I don't know any trader that's willing to do that other than somebody that just wants to give back, give people the opportunity to get in for a relatively small amount of money, but every dollar counts. Don't ever underestimate. Every single dollar matters. And for people that are wanting to open accounts in the ballpark of 100,000, you don't charge any fee whatsoever other than a success fee, and that success fee, I believe, is 20%. So if you're not making your client money, you're not making anything, and you're living and dying with all of the um, research and all of the decision making that has to go into what's our game plan? How are we going to win this game? 18 years of doing that, and my hat's off to you. Most people couldn't weather the storm for 18 years. So there's a couple ways for you to get involved with us and really begin the process. And I usually end the night with some type of positive comment, but I think it's most appropriate now is, I worked with Billie Jean King for years in the 90s, and she had called me up one day and said, "Hey, I want you to run World Team Tennis in this little town in Palm Beach called Wellington. It's called the Wellington Aces, and will you coach the team and will you help the manager run the team?" I said, "Sure." It was a dream come true. And then I stayed there for a few years, and then I ran up to Tampa and did the same thing. And she always had a statement before it became world renowned, which is pressure is a privilege. And you think about that, what does that mean? Well, if you're feeling pressure and you're feeling nervous and you feel like you're outside of your comfort zone and you're taking risk, which is all about pressure, it really means that there's something there for you at the end, and you're really anxious and wondering if you can get the gold ring, right? So preferably if if there's the end game that you could be the 10%, you could be uh, part of this 18-year track record. You could be the one that's receiving this passive income and developing a relationship with somebody like Andy. So the pressure that you're feeling, it's a privilege because you are knocking on the door of a win and you feel it. That's why you feel the pressure. If there's nothing there for you upside and there's nothing there for you to win, then you're not going to feel that pressure, right? And another thing that Billy would talk about is the fear of failure. People get scared to fail. She always says that failing is nothing but information. She talks about it all the time. It's information on how to get better and what to do next time. So when you're feeling that pressure, consider it a privilege. There's a win knocking at your door. If you're feeling like you've failed a little, take in the information, pivot a little bit, and regroup. And I think, Andy, you've mastered that in these 18 years. And congrats for doing that. Um, Tell us a little bit about the market today. I mean, people are interested in following. We're talking about 18 years and we're trying to excite them about 3 weeks, 4 weeks of trading. But how are we doing here since we've started the podcast? And can you tell us a little more on some of the positions we're in?
Yeah. So, when we got started with the podcast, I think, we were not too far apart from the Iranian war started. And so what I've been saying all along is that, there's different time frames to positions that are put on. And last time that we were on, I mentioned that there was a ceasefire. We still have another 6 days to go in that. But, the announcement of the ceasefire was very favorable to the positions that I had on. I hadn't really put on any new positions that made it favorable. It was just positions that I had been holding. And I had a very good day. And we talked about what does a very good day mean. It's 5%. That's what it was on that particular day, and it was a very good day. Since that time, they sent JD Vance over to try to get things taken care of. That didn't work out so well, and the crude oil's been volatile. But I think there's a lot of options that could happen, and with those options are a wide variety of results. I mean, I heard somebody talk about an oil embargo, and if that happened, it would probably be the biggest oil embargo that's happened in the history of the world. And if that happened, then oil prices could go as high as $150 a barrel. At the same time, the crude oil has come down. It's been over 100 on the futures markets, probably about as high as 106 since we spoke last time. And that's been beneficial to the long-term positions that I've had. I have taken a couple positions off, so just lightening up and looking to let the market come to me. We've talked about trade alerts. Trade alerts are short-term. I'm potentially 2 days away from getting a trade alert signal, which would be a great thing. So that's kind of where we're at. Long-term outlook on what I do: shorting soybean oil, buying soybeans. Still long-term short on that position. So that will remain, and I'll continue to lighten up as the market it becomes more and more favorable, gets back towards normal. But at the same time, in the short term, when things get extended, you can expect it's like you pull a rubber band too far, it's going to shoot back. And so we're kind of getting that way in the short term on this correction. So potentially buying soybean oil. So that's really where we're at. I haven't put on any trade alert trades in the last 2 weeks. As I mentioned, they probably are going to come out between 1 and 1.5 per month. But the good thing on that is that, my opinion is that it's going to be a very favorable result when they come out, just based on the historical data that I have. So that's kind of where we're at.
So reading between the lines, we're doing very well in uncertain times, is what I'm reading between the lines. That your soybean positions are solid, your crude oil solid, not taking a position over the last few weeks, letting the market come to you, solid decision. Um, all these things are very exciting. I mean, super exciting. We had mentioned a little bit about the regulators, and we talked about how to create comfort for our clients, your clients. I'm simply here to bring people to what I believe are really positive things in the world, people that can make a difference in other people's lives. And I sure believe that you're at the top of that list. Um, Tell us a little bit about, though, the regulations that you are, always having to be aware, are, always watching your every move.
Yeah. So first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to go back just a little bit, and you said that things are working out, and truth be told, they are. But as I've been saying all along, there are times when things get uncomfortable, and as I said last week, and so I just want to reinforce this because I think it's important for people to understand, and I'm just going to tell it the way that it is. But when the crude oil market went up, I believe it was March 9th, I was underwater on my positions. But they're long-term positions, and they've been through droughts, they've been through high interest rates, low interest rates, stock market booms, stock market busts, and they've been through pretty much everything other than they haven't been through a political or a presidential assassination, and I hope they never are. But they've gone through all these results, and they've always come out doing pretty well. So I say that because when the crude oil went up, I did lighten my position because what I do is what I would call more technical. It's numbers, but my numbers do not predict the end of a war. And so when you have this going on, you have to be safe. You do not want to put any, chance of terminal risk on the table. And so I immediately took that off. I took a little bit of a hit, and the positions were underwater. But with the price activity since that time, they're coming back, and they still have a little bit of a ways to go, but I'm confident that that will work out. Now, in terms of the regulation, there's a agency. It's called the National Futures Association. Um, they do a wonderful job. This is an industry that needs regulation. It's highly regulated, and it needs to be. So what they've done, they go out and they do a lot more than what I'm going to tell you. But what I've experienced and the company has experienced is examinations. They come in and they ask you for all the information that they want. They request it. And when they request something, you give that to them. And so it's not always a fun experience. I've experienced a wide range of emotions in these examinations, but the company has always come out better. The company has learned what they can do better, and we always strive to achieve that. I tell the NFA all the time that we want to be the model for your regulators. Is that Volkert Investment Management is going to be a model company. We have a ways to go, but we're always trying our hardest right there as well. So right now we're being examined, as we mentioned, and so I'll be on my best behavior. But like I say, we've always learned and become better because of the regulation. And what really this industry is all about is there's great opportunity, and so with great opportunity comes a lot of interested participants in every line of the industry. You could have people who want to work with a Volkert Investment or some other firm and have them manage your money. You have people that are individuals that want to try it themselves. That's what I did. I tried it myself. I liked it. I earned my education. I paid for it. And then you also have the big companies, the ADM, grain companies, Bunge and Cargill, and all those big companies that are doing it as part of their business. They're hedging, and probably also speculating. But anyway, there's a lot of regulation. It's a good thing. Not always comfortable, not always fun, but necessary.
Well, we right at 7:29. We're trying to keep these at 30 minutes, and this was so informative. Thank you for sharing the positions. At the end of the day, people that want to thrive in life never give up on being the 1% or the 5% or the 10%. The people that really elevate and find their truly their best life. And if you're in the top 5% of partners, husbands, wives, spouse, children, and you're in the top 5% in how you treat your employees, if you own businesses or if you're an employee, if you're working for somebody, and you're just one of those very few and far between employees that just give everything. We're only interested in talking to the people that want to be that, right? We're trying to take you, like Nick says, just that little bit further because you're almost there. And if you want to become one of the 5 or 10% in this space, then there's an opportunity here for maybe that to happen for you. And like Andy said, there's no guarantees in the future. There's no guarantees we're going to wake up tomorrow. But if you want to have a shot at being in the 5 or 10%, then maybe Andy's worth giving a shot. So what Billie Jean King says in that world, since we're talking about Billie today, you'll see a picture of her and I there. I think it's probably your far right corner. Is she likes to say, "Go for it." Anytime she signs her book or anytime she says something at the end of an interview or something, she's always saying, let's go for it. So if you want to be, different and you want to take on some risk and you want to feel that pressure and you want to feel that flowing through your body, then maybe this is for you. If it's not, please find something that really, really does activate you and allows for you to hopefully once again be part of a very small group that does something really incredible. You owe it to yourself. If you've been an average person your whole life, here's your shot at doing something extremely special. And if this is not for you, go find it. Whether it's biking, hiking, learn pickleball, read a few books, do something that gets you out of your box, something that's different than what you've ever done before, elevate yourself in some way. And I'm going to bring to you concepts and ideas and people that will inspire hopefully some of you to take the direction that maybe we're talking about, and realizing that not everything we'll talk about will be for you. So having said that, thank you everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the things that you've done to help make this show kick off strong. If you want to talk to Andy and you want to get those text alerts, those trade alerts, and you're going to consider an account, no matter what size, give them a call. Give them a call tomorrow, 858-761-3549. Again, 858-761-3549. He'll spend as much time necessary with you. He'll really get into the gritty details of the trades. Happy to share with you the track record. I know I have the track record. When I saw it, I said, boy, this is amazing. So I saw the ups and downs in all rounds, but what I did see at the end of every cycle, there was a very positive result, and that's why so many people have stayed near Andy's side for, it's going on 2 decades. Andy, thank you again for a great, great evening. Thank you for being you, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Go for it, everybody. Like Billy says, pressure is a privilege. Failing is only the next step to learning something and how to do it maybe a little better. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Bobby.